4, 3, 2. I think we're live, Sarah.
All right, let's do this.
Yeah, this should be pretty cool, I think. This is our first one. Been talking about doing this for 3 years, I think. Something like that. So I think what I've kind of learned is talking about doing something like this for 3 years was completely overthinking it, made us do nothing. So we're gonna have a really simple format where Sarah is our guest today, and we're just gonna have a conversation for the next 30 minutes, and we'll see where it goes. So we don't have a really formal format yet, but hopefully as we start doing this, that'll shape into something. Maybe one day we'll have a theme song. Yeah, maybe.
All right.
Maybe a title other than just Live Live episode 0000001, which is not binary. The joke there, of course, is that we're going to have 1,000,000 episodes. This is just the first.
Million.
Or actually,
Millions.
999,999,000.
There you go.
999 is the plan. So
a different guest every time.
yeah, exactly. It's not just going to be Sarah and me talking about random topics. I think we'll kind of evolve this into a couple different directions, right? We can go to the construction sites.
Yeah.
Really, anyone can join from anywhere. We have multiple people in a conversation. One day we might go full Joe Rogan and just do 10-hour sessions, right? Just,
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I know people would love that. But
Yep. And a valuable use of a work day.
absolutely. For everyone listening as well. So we're just trying to kill all productivity for the for all the watchers and listeners.
Yeah.
So that
Entertainment.
that's the dream. But I think there's some really cool stuff that we can end up doing. Anna and Maddie can go to showrooms, do stuff from there. We can call in. We can talk about different countertop stuff. Just whatever we think is kind of helpful and tells the story of what we do, the challenges that we face, as well as how we can help homeowners as they're thinking about their own houses, even if they're doing some DIY.
Totally.
Which on that note, I believe, Sarah,
Yes.
you've done some DIY on your place, right?
Minimally. Yeah. We, husband and I, he's also an architect. We did our fireplace. We designed our fireplace area and executed it on our own, except for the actual, fireplace unit. We framed it. It's a gas fireplace. So yeah, we framed it, did the drywall, which was like all mud. It was just like 2 sheets of drywall, but we just mudded the whole thing. Painted and designed it. So, and the stone, there was like stone installed, so we didn't do that part, but designed it. And then Chris, my husband, did some inset shelving onto the side. It's like a corner unit, so like built-in storage for a record collection, which turned out really nice. And it only took a year, weekends and evenings with 2 little kids. So, and we've done some cool wall treatments and stuff in our home, but nothing too huge. We are gonna tackle backsplash tile, I hope, in the next month or 2. That's gonna be me, I think. I want to try my hand at it. We'll see how it goes. Nothing too wild.
That's been the DIY tile work seems to be a running theme amongst the LivCo design team. It always looks easier than it is, right?
Well, there's this idea that it's not really that hard. It seems like backsplash, at least, is kind of low stakes. I'm not talking about anything in a shower where you need pitch, and I don't know, flooring seems a little bit more difficult too, especially when you're talking about leveling and stuff. But like backsplash, I mean, yeah, it's mostly aesthetics. So I figure I can't mess it up too badly, but I think I want to go pretty wild with the grout. I'm thinking of like a bright magenta colored grout.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, and you say you haven't really done a big project, but you guys, I mean, you weren't the general on it, but you designed and you guys renovated your entire condo years ago.
Yeah, that was a total gut. It's like a 1920s typical Chicago 6-unit condo building, and no one had touched it since maybe the 50s, 60s, maybe. You know, it was floor-to-floor pink carpeting everywhere. It still had clock wiring and very funky layout. I mean, it was a 1920s layout, so there was even like a maid's quarters in the back bedroom, and a really tiny kitchen all the way in the back. So, yeah, the design of it went pretty quickly. It was more of the, the contracting. LivCo couldn't do our work in the city, so we were kind of on our own and trying to find a contractor, and that was, you really get an idea of the emotion involved in that decision, and just how much faith you need to put into that person who's going to be in your home and managing this huge part of your life for a number of months. So honestly, that whole experience gave me kind of an appreciation for LivCo and from the client side, and trying to understand, like reassuring them and being able to establish trust early is so critical, because otherwise you start to question everything throughout the whole construction process. So that was interesting, but totally valuable for obviously what I do every day. But in terms of like going through doing our place on our own, it seemed simple, more simple than I thought it was going to be. The good thing about the way Chris and I work is that we both focus on different things. It's not like we argue a lot, or we didn't have many disagreements, because he kind of left the layout changes and things like that to me, but then he cared more about, like, well, what kind of insulation are we going to put in here, or what kind of space pack unit are we going to put in. Like, he was more technical, which is, I think, speaks to his area of architecture anyway. So that was pretty good.
Yeah, and just to clarify on that, so Sarah's husband Chris is also an architect, which I pity the general contractor that works for two architects. But you guys are pretty cool and reasonable, and have an appreciation for the craft of the people, doing the work, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, and to be fair, like, Chris definitely took out most of that burden with communicating with the contractor and hammering out, like, the details that needed to get fixed, if anything did need to get fixed, because I had just had a baby, and I was kind of over it. I was just like, you got to deal with this, because I'm at a different place in my life right now.
Yeah, there's something to be said about doing a bunch of crazy construction work with young children, right? Because your life is already a little bit chaotic.
Yeah.
And you just, at least that's, our first major addition was when our twins were like 16 months old or something, and we lived in the house. We're like, yeah, our lives were chaos anyway, so why not just do it? And then by the time, they can talk and walk and all that, then we'll have a fresh new house. So for the first one, and the second one, last year down here in North Carolina, that one we didn't live in the house during construction.
Yeah.
So it was a different experience, but it's hard that way too, because I was constantly always coming over here to check on stuff, and then you're carrying two bills, right?
Yeah. Exactly. And yeah, not living in the house is critical, but even though, it was, we had to, it was a full gut.
Right.
We had bought it and not lived in it before we decided knew we had to renovate. But even though we didn't live there, it was on the third floor of a 6-unit condo building, and there were people that were living there underneath us, and so that was an interesting experience also. But it also, it totally gave me an idea and appreciation of just how loud it is, just how uncomfortable it could be, the other, like, logistical issues with, construction that you don't necessarily think about when you're just designing your place. How are the demo guys going to get all of the old plaster out of the third floor block up? Well, they built a garbage chute and just threw it off our balcony into the bed of a truck that was parked in our parking spot, you know? Couldn't put a dumpster out back, you can't block the alley, you can't take up your neighbor's parking spot. It's city work is its own special thing. So there's just, oh my gosh, the logistics of construction are fascinating too, like all those little pieces. But yeah, you don't think about those flooring days where it's just sanding and noise and all the dust that comes with drywall and all those things, and how it can affect, you know, people that actually live in the same building. So that was, we got almost daily reports. I call them reports from our neighbors about the inconveniences of renovating your home when you're still there.
Yeah, I remember that relationship wasn't a real good one with your neighbors, who I believe have since moved out. And I don't imagine they're listening to this right now, but yeah, they didn't seem to have a whole lot of patience for you guys, you know, obviously massively improving, you know, the building, your own space, but also the value of the building, which, you know, when we do work on a street, I think people are usually appreciative at the end of the day, because we're doing, you know, major improvements, especially when we do major exterior improvements, right? It's the benefits there, and that's why we put that letter out when we start every project. Like, we know this is can be disruptive, and we're here to make it not as disruptive as possible for the neighbors. But stuff happens, and at the end of the day, you know, we're here to help everyone improve their homes, improve their lives. And but I will say, and I don't know if you felt this way, but in the two projects that we did, it's very stressful. Like, I don't want to, you know, sugarcoat that, and you don't want to slow the project down. And now I did my own, so we didn't use the full LivCo process where we fully define everything before we build it. So there's decisions, tile decisions.
I was trying to live the process. That's
yeah, the tile decisions were made a little bit late, you know, in the game.
About that.
Yeah. It worked out, but you know, a lot of that stuff just gets so stressful. But after it's all done, it's amazing how that just feels like such a blip in time, and then you can't.
Totally.
It's like your brain kind of forgets about it.
I
I've never.
don't know. I think Chris might be traumatized. It was a blip in time for me, but he was also like changing jobs and living with his in-laws because we had nowhere to go, and you know, had the new baby. Plus, he was managing the construction of our home. So yeah. Plus the construction of our previous home. They both started demo the same day. So that was, you know, a lot.
Well, on because that was what, 5 years ago, 4 years ago.
2018.
2018. Okay, yeah. So 7. Wow.
I'm sorry. We purchased. 2018.
So what's looking back? What's a feature or something in the design that you wish you did or did differently?
We talk about it all the time, and I bring it up at our client meetings too when we're in detailed design. Light switch placement. It makes so much sense on paper and as a trained architect, and you're imagining the way you're going to live in this space. But until you're actually in it, you're like, dang, I really wish there was a light switch there. Why didn't we put it all the way across the room for aesthetics? No, it doesn't work at all. So, yeah, we were very stingy with light switch placements purely for aesthetic reasons, and I'm kicking myself for it.
Well, I mean, it quickly, especially like in an open plan situation, it gets really difficult to find places to put switches, and then code requires switches entering different spaces. So you end up with all these 3-way, 4-way, 5-way switches.
Yeah.
So we've kind of found, and I think Meg, my wife, is listening to this right now, in any house, in our last house in Riverside, like the figuring out the light switches was like when we went to bed at night, because it looks like they're off, but they're all 3-ways, and at our house now too. But so much of it is a function of code, of having to have all those 3-ways.
Yeah. I will say we had an interesting electrical inspector in the city who was pretty hands off. let's just say that. So I don't think the code was much of an issue for us. It was just purely like aesthetics. Yeah. It was just like, yeah, I don't want to walk in and see that light switch right there. So let's put it all the way on the other side of the room.
What about vents? Do you have any vents, or did you eliminate all the HVAC vents for aesthetics?
No, we didn't do that. We got radiators anyway, so, and then space pack outlets are in the ceiling. So I think space pack outlets is actually an interesting one because we didn't factor in where those would be. Those were kind of dictated by the contractor or the space pack, the HVAC installer. So we do have one. There is one big open plan area of our home that has the biggest windows, and they all face south. And that always gets a lot warmer compared to the other half of the house. And we're in a single floor condo. It's not like we're talking about, first floor, second floor zoning or anything like that. But it's also where the kitchen is, and it's also where most of the area where we mostly hang out and have people over. So it gets really warm in there, especially in the summer. And we realized that we should have thought about that more carefully in terms of the number of outlets. We might have 2 in this area, but like in another room in the front of the house, there's 3. And it's like, well, why couldn't we have 3 in this room where we needed a little bit more? And then we also didn't factor in the fact that we were putting in custom built bookshelves, like as part of our cabinetry, almost to the ceiling. Well, it's blocking like the 2 outlets, the ceiling outlets from in that one corner. And I always wonder like if those shelves weren't that as high, or if we had thought about, push the outlets out a little further, could we have gotten better cooling in that space? But I mean, overall, not huge things, but definitely something I hadn't considered before. I would say like that's the most interesting part about every single job, whether it's my job or like a LivCo job, like because they're all different, you always find one more detail, and every single job is like, oh, I didn't think about that. Let's make sure we consider that for the next one. And it's always something different. It's like, it's kind of crazy that it could be the variety is that great for all of them.
Well, and kind of shifting gears there, off of your project into some of, your projects with LivCo. And if anybody's just joining us, I don't know how to see how many viewers we have. I think we might be up to 2. And there's a way to turn on chat or comments, I think, but this is our first episode, so I haven't figured that out yet. But anyway, from the standpoint of LivCo projects, and I was going to fully introduce Sarah for anyone just joining us. Sarah is our director of design, licensed architect. Yeah, that's right. Well, you don't want to start too soon because this wasn't advertised. People might be joining us just now, so they probably missed the beginning where all the meat was. But Sarah's our director of design, licensed architect. We worked together at Optima 17 years ago. I don't even know, something like that. Yeah, probably 18 years ago. And Chris as well. You guys were interning there, and cross paths and stayed. Or was
no? I think Chris was a full.
Chris was full time.
Yeah.
You were in graduate school.
He was hired by Optima. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I got shipped off to Arizona at some point there. But yeah, I mean, I think it was kind of cool because we kept in touch, which I think anyone who works at Optima somehow keeps in touch because it's quite an experience. Optima is a developer-led or architect-led developer, construction, architecture, real estate, brokerage, builds mostly 700 unit plus really cool design heavy buildings in Chicago and Arizona. So anyone who, first of all, gets hired there has been vetted pretty well and kind of has a passion for, the whole idea of the control of the design and construction. So Sarah, then we kept in touch, and when we were first hiring architects, you were our first design hire 9 years ago, 8 years ago?
Eight.
Eight.
Yeah.
So Sarah's seen a lot. I mean, do you want to describe what your role was when you first started at LivCo?
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, when I was first hired, it was mostly selections help. But prior to that, it was just Dave, Russ, Luann as an administrator in the office, so it was just the four of us in the office, and Dave was doing everything design related, so drawings, conceptual design, and the interior design selections. And I think you were just like, I don't know how to format this, do whatever you want, but we need to like bring some order to the process, and we need some assistance here, because selections is such a critical part of the project, but it's also very data heavy. Like, it not only data, but it's client heavy, it's time heavy. It's a huge part of the process, which sometimes gets overlooked. Like, I think there's always the excitement of like the initial design development, and then obviously there's architectural drawings, and then there's construction. Well, there's this huge chunk, which is the selection, and that's everything that a client needs to select that's going into the house, everything from base trim profile and size to the appliance package. And then there's also, okay, what kind of roofing is it, and what color is that going to be? Is it going to match the rest of the house? I mean, there's hundreds on every project. Light switches, little stuff that even homeowners don't think about. So I was in charge of working through that process with the clients, and then also trying to manage the data in a way that could be communicated to the field and actually brought to life through the construction of the project. And then over time that kind of developed, LivCo was growing that entire time, or at least, my entire 8.5 years here, it's been growing. So eventually I became pregnant, so I knew I was going to be leaving for a time, for temporarily. So we realized that with the volume that we had been doing at that point, we needed to bring another designer in that could kind of pick that up, or pick up the selection series. So that's when we hired Anna, and she is an experienced interior designer. So she came from the world of selections, and interior design, whereas I'd been trained as an architect, and the selections world was a little bit new to me. But one of the things I like about it, and what I like to tell our new hires and our interns, is that it's a really great entry point to residential architecture, because it does get you thinking about all that little stuff very early. It gets you thinking about, what size opening in the cabinets do we need to plan for, what fridge size, it gets you thinking about where those light switches are going to go. It gets you thinking about the type of light fixture that's going in there, where does it make sense to enter the room, and being able to control that, and what windows are going in here, what's the grill pattern, how does that tie in with the rest of the design. So all of those, starting with the details, I think, is an interesting way of like then being able to spread out and see the big picture. So it was a great entry point for me, not coming from single family residential world. And then, when I came back from my maternity leave, we had Anna, who was doing selections, and then my role changed a little bit, and it was like, okay, well, what do you want to do at LivCo? You were very open about letting me kind of choose a path there, and it made sense just from experience level and where we needed the assistance for me to start looking at helping with the feasibility end of things, so the conceptual design. And I had already been helping out with the existing conditions documentation, visiting the homes, visiting with clients on the first measures. So then that kind of naturally translated into, okay, let's talk a little bit more, let's develop these conceptual designs with Dave, and doing the production part of that, the presentations and things like that. And then here I am today, and I lead the feasibilities that are coming in steadily.
Well, and on that note, I've never really thought about it until this conversation, but you're 100% right. Like, kind of starting at the completion details and understanding all those nuances is such a big part of what our architectural team does, right? So yeah. Even in our feasibility design process, which is essentially concept design, it's a pretty robust design process that isn't just floor plan sketches. Like we're modeling everything down to the window grills. We have furniture, we have lighting placement. Like we really want to show a complete design. We're not saying that that is the one or that's exactly what it's going to look like, but what we found is if we really front load that high level of design early, we're able to move the project to construction faster is the idea, because our clients are able to visualize it, give a lot of feedback, and have a comfort level with it, right? As opposed to just like, how do they visualize a floor plan sketch? You know, we can, because that's what we do, but honestly, there's more to it than that, right? Is the doorway arched? You don't see that in a floor plan, you know? So I never really thought about it like that. That is like a really important piece of the training, and I think we kind of circling back to Optima. I think we kind of existed in that world too, because we had to deal with. I was working on platinum unit cabinetry, right, and finishes of cabinetry on owner change units, as well as the core and shell of the building, as well as the landscaping of roof terraces. Like it's all connected. And then on the Anna note, I remember after we hired Anna, and you and I talked, and it was one of those things where until we had an interior designer on staff, we didn't know what we didn't know. Right. Because it's just a completely different world of training that is not part of, you know, our infinite years of architecture school and tests that we had to take to be licensed. There's nobody taught us how to extract a program from our clients to understand their needs, right? Nobody taught us color palettes. We just think that we have a knack for it, right? So there's something that we quickly learned that's it's a parallel discipline, but focused on very different stuff that we just don't know that well. Just like a builder saying that they know how to design, they may, but they don't really know what they don't know until you work with an architect that really understands all the pieces and parts in those relationships.
And I think that's a really interesting point about working in the single family residential world, which is often ignored during architectural training. Like I know you and I have been.
Because it's the hardest thing to design. It's harder than a boat. A boat has rules, right?
Right. The only thing that's really governing single family homes is really zoning code. You know, where are your setbacks? What part of the lot can you build on? And you can only build it so big. But in terms of the form of it, how many windows, you know, it could be anything. And because of that, or I should say, like, that's what I find so interesting about it now, is that there is such a huge human component to it. You know, throughout architecture school, usually your professor is giving you the program for the building, or you're given some kind of description or some guidelines or something. It's not like totally freeform or anything like that. But like you said, extracting it, like figuring out the science or art of how to get a client to understand what they need or want from their home is something that just kind of you learn over time. There's nothing that can really teach you through school or anything about how to get that information, and that's a lot of what feasibility is, and even architectural, our detailed design process is education, because most of the time clients are only going through this process once in a lifetime. Most of the time, it's a huge investment. It's a huge you know, undertaking for so many months, like, you know, from start to finish, feasibility to beginning, ending of construction. It could be a year, you know, maybe it's 10 months, but it's significant, right? So trying to educate clients on, you know, light switch placement, or why, you know, you might want tile in this area as opposed to a different flooring, or why, you know, all the little micro decisions that goes into designing a space or selecting items that go in a space is one of the most fun parts of the job, but nothing that you could have prepared yourself for coming out of school. So it's awesome.
Sweet. So we're at 29 minutes. Russ said he didn't even think we could go 20 minutes. I mean, we could seriously we could
two architects talking about design and
We could Joe Rogan it.
Go forever. Yeah.
And you didn't know this, but this is actually an audition to be a co-host. So.
Oh my God.
Let's see. I mean, I have a whole bunch of questions, but I mean, I think we just got into some really good conversation. What's your favorite town or neighborhood that we've worked in?
Oh, interesting. Way back when we did the one house in Willow Springs, and that is just, I never knew about that neighborhood, and it's just so different from other parts of Chicago with the terrain and everything. It was very cool. But, I'm not from the western suburbs. I mean, I always referred to them as the south suburbs because I'm from the northwest suburbs. So but my husband's from the west suburbs, west suburbs. I do love Riverside just because of the architectural history there. My husband's from LaGrange, so it's hard not to say LaGrange too. Clarendon Hills is also really fun, just, literally with the hills. Just any kind of different terrain is always interesting, visually and everything like that. I mean, we've done one job in Oak Park. Oak Park is Oak Park. We've got history there, architectural history, and such a very passionate a municipality about aesthetics and things like that. So that's always an exciting challenge, but we don't do too much there.
Oh, well, because it takes a year to get a permit. We don't have time for that.
I mean, it's hard not to like any of that. I like all of that.
Yeah,
really great. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned Clarendon Hills, and I don't know, that town just kind of fascinates me. I've had a lot of calls with some prospects in those areas, and obviously, we're just finished or are finishing an addition project there, and then we did a basement project there a couple years ago, and I've just always loved it because it's beautiful. It's kind of secret, right? It's housing stock.
It's not one of those suburban names that everybody recognizes.
Not at all. But it's just same schools as Hinsdale, like all accessible. I mean, it's not inexpensive to live in Clarendon Hills, but it doesn't kind of carry the Hinsdale prestige. So they're just like a little bit more chill and low key. Yeah. Really cool little downtown. And so we've been excited to have projects there and prospects there, just because it seems like it's so hard to break in to a community, which that's how a lot of those western suburbs are. We've done a lot of work in Riverside, and a lot of that was kind of because I lived there is how it started. Yeah. And then people go with who they know and who they trust. And so it kind of starts with a couple projects, and hopefully it builds from there. Hinsdale's another one. Like our first Hinsdale project, when we got that, we were like, thank goodness, because it's really hard just to get your first project there because those towns are so tight knit. Now we've got 5 or 6 in Hinsdale and a couple in Clarendon Hills. Obviously, we've always done a lot in Riverside, LaGrange, Downers Grove. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's quite a world out there in the Chicago suburbs, and we're designing one in Glenview now, so that's not so easy to go north, but we can, and if there's a need for what we do. So it's cool stuff everywhere. Well, I guess that kind of wraps up episode 1. Looks like we had 1 view. Woo-hoo. That's okay. That's just a live view. Now we can put it out there and people can listen to it on their drive home or something. But really appreciate you doing this, Sarah.
Thanks for having me.
You're awesome. When did I email you? Monday?
About doing this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I was like, so. It's like, hey, can you do the first LivLive episode on Wednesday? Because if we didn't do it, it was never going to happen. So we did it. Easy peasy. We'll keep this thing going every week.
Awesome.
Is there anything that we didn't cover that you were hoping we would talk about?
No.
We should have
I figured it would go anywhere. I mean, I don't know.
We should have a segment that's called "What Can Dave Do Better?" What can I do better, Sarah?
Make that public? I mean, how much is it? Only going to be a half hour?
You don't have to answer that.
Kidding.
We can all do a lot of things better, as George would say. It's called good to great, not good to perfect.
Exactly.
So we'll end on that note. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for tuning in, viewer, and see everyone next week.
All right.
I think, did it stop streaming?